All right, we're talking about the cessation of speaking the name and how that affects our scriptures today. And so, a recap, we looked at the giving of the law. There was the prohibition on speaking it in vain. But yet within a couple hundred years of that, we find the common people, and I'm not thinking this is any different in the 200 years before. I believe that people spoke the name with regularity. And the Boaz offered a common greeting to his reapers. The reapers responded back, "The blessings of Yahweh be on thee." And so I believe it was common for people to speak the name. That's why there's over 6,800 times that the name is found in the Old Testament. It was spoken frequently in the Old Testament. And so then we looked at the book of Malachi, where there was at least some 4 passages where we read of Malachi placing the name on the lips of his readers, that they were speaking the name, and yet they were not living the life. Their heart was not right with God the way that it should have been. And we talked about the blessing, that there would be a book of remembrance for those that thought on the name. And so I tried to, I'm not saying that I every day sit down and say Yahweh, 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 or whatever, but I do try to meditate, and I spent a good deal of time through the years considering and studying, digging in. I'm not saying I know it all. I certainly do not know all about anything, but I have scratched the surface on some of these things. And so it's something that I've looked into. And so it was during this intertestamental period of time, about the same time the prohibition, that the very first translation of the Old Testament occurred. And that was what we know today as the Septuagint. And it was after this. There's some early copies of the Septuagint that do include the Tetragrammaton. But there's a point that they start using the substitute, which was the word Kyrios, which is our New Testament word, G2962. And so what that means is when we get to the New Testament, and I can give you some statistics, that G2962 occurs some 748 times in 687 verses in the King James. It also would be in about 715 times in 656 verses in the Net Bible, or the critical text. And I believe some 230 to 235 of those times it has the meaning. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying every time it means it. Sometimes it does just mean sir. But sometimes it carries the meaning, particularly when it's quoted. There's at least 90 or more quotes, direct quotes from the Old Testament verses that contain the name. And so when it happens, we're talking about from the first translation and how it gets into the New Testament.